All right, let's move on to later in the day. Let's go to the afternoon. Let's go to this is the second game of the day on Saturday, the Las Vegas Bowl.
How is that at
Check.
1:30 Central Time?
Yeah, 2:30 Eastern on ESPN. Florida, Oregon State. Oregon State 10-ish point favorite over under 53. Yeah, I guess this game is 11:30 a.m. local time. A lot of these morning bowls, which is maybe a little rough for Florida, but they've had time to adjust. This game is in Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas, Nevada, 2:30 Eastern on ESPN. It's the only Power Five matchup on Saturday. The lot of things to mention here, especially on the Florida side. Well, when I look at this, it's like, all right, two really good rushing attacks, two really run heavy teams with really good offensive lines against defenses that really struggled to stop the run all year. So, and it's on a fast track. Florida's defense was horrible all year. They will be without a number of key pieces. I mean, defensive lineman Jalen Lee, their star linebacker Ventrell Miller is going to the NFL, cornerback Avery Helm. And, they dismissed Brenton Cox earlier this season. They also won't have Chief Borders, David Reese, Lloyd Summerall, who were depth pieces at outside linebacker would have started. So now they're going to have to rely on a guy like Jack Pyburn, who's like a special teamer, to play outside linebacker. Gervin Dexter is going to be a stud in the NFL. Defensive tackle is going to go to the NFL this year. He is going to play at least. But Florida also will be without their, second leading receiver, Justin Shorter, their star All-American offensive lineman, Osiris Torrance, although their backup there is pretty good. Their offensive line is really good. And most importantly, they won't have their quarterback, Anthony Richardson, and their backup quarterback, John Kitna's son, was dismissed from the team, arrested on child pornography charges. But Jack Miller, who will start, is an Ohio State transfer. He was the backup coming in the year, had thumb surgery, so wasn't healthy. 4-star kid. So obviously, very highly recruited. So very talented. And he has a really good backfield. Florida, excellent rushing attack. And he's going to have a healthier wide receiver core, even without Shorter available. Florida will get a couple wide receivers back from injury. And he will work on an offensive line that'll give him time, and a defensive line for Oregon State that gets zero pressure, which I think is huge for, an inexperienced quarterback. Oregon State 128th in passing down sack rate. So, but there's a lot of uncertainty there with a kid who was third string on the depth chart at quarterback a couple weeks ago. I think Florida profiles as a potential, all right, in a bowl pool, if you want to get crazy, maybe you go Florida, because you could argue they're the more talented team, but it all depends on what you think of Jack Miller. I'm also leaning towards the over here. Fast track, two, poor run defenses against two teams that can really run the ball. And I think Miller can have some success. He's going to get time to throw. He's got some weapons on the outside. There's a lot of talent on this field on a fast track in Vegas. What are your thoughts on what Miller will bring to the offense? Because the other question here is okay, Florida, their running attack was so good. I mean, if you look at their backs, ETN and company, they average 6 yards a carry. But how much of that will, because Miller doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he is, a really good thrower and should have command of the offense by now. But he doesn't have the running ability of Richardson, obviously. So how much of Florida's success and in Napier's rushing offense of their backs are because of the threat of Richardson, and how much will that overall decrease? Now, their offensive line does profile really well going against a weak defensive line. And the same thing on the other side of the ball. Oregon State's offensive line is excellent. They should move the ball at will here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, hold on here. There's a team that we just talked about that's taking heavy money on the board. I think somebody's listening to us.
Who's that?
UTSA just flipped to a favorite. Okay, wow. So yeah. So I think with Jack Miller, it's committed to Ohio State, no path to playing time. He was highly recruited, offers from just about everybody. He transfers to Florida as a 4-star pro style recruit. And you think that maybe the passing game could be decent here. And I think one thing that you need to know about Jack Miller is that he had a thumb injury this summer, and he wasn't even cleared to throw a ball till a month ago. So, we'll see how he comes out. And that's what kind of leads me to, if Florida has a pulse, this is a live betting opportunity. And I say that because it's Billy Napier, head coach, a guy that we know, he knows the number, he knows the total, he knows all the numbers when he takes the field. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's this mad rush in the fourth quarter by Billy Napier, even if Oregon State, who is going to try to like grind this like nails. I mean, what do they average? 29.6 seconds per play. Oregon State's going to try to line up, punch you in the face, run the ball, drain clock, first downs. But I agree with you on the over. And the reason I agree with you on the over is A, Billy Napier. B, Florida's defense is terrible in passing downs, 127th in defensive passing down success rate. What does that mean? That means that Damian Martinez for Oregon State is going to have huge runs. He took over starting duties after the bye week. He averages 3.5 yards after contact. He averages nearly 3 15-yard plus explosive runs per game. And that's just bad news for the Florida defense. So every time Oregon State has an explosive play on the ground, which they will have, you can expect Florida to probably run a little tempo or do whatever they got to do to try to keep up. Now, from a market perspective, I made this game like a field goal, and I knew that once Anthony Richardson was announced out, the thing would steam all the way up. And the question is where is the buyback? Well, we found the buyback in the market. Every sharp was circling 11. Once it got to 11, that thing took massive number back on Florida. So I think that's really your buy point. 10, you're at Oregon State. 11, you're on Florida. If you're playing this live, I just don't see Florida and Billy Napier laying down. They never have. Jack Miller may not be warmed up until the second half. I think it is a prime spot for some live betting on the Gators here. It's not the team that I think is going to show up. This is still a first-year coach, and this is still players that are going to be returning for this coach next year. So, there's the rushing attack for Oregon State. Maybe it's a great first-half bet on Oregon State with Jack Miller trying to shake some rust off. I think if you don't have any action on this game, I would either go over or I would say Oregon State in the first half. I would be looking Florida in the second half because it's just not like them to give up. It's not like Billy Napier to ever give up in a fourth quarter in any situation whatsoever. So the number is oversold in the market, though. I don't know if you agree, but I mean, 11 is where the huge buyback was.
Yeah, I would lean Florida. And I'm going to put together a round robin bowl season underdog parlay. I might include Florida in there because what do you want with a round robin? Now, I might go Oregon State in like a pool, like confidence pool, picking them to win. But with a round robin, the upside, there's a lot of uncertainty with Miller, but he's really talented. And then you could argue Florida is the more talented overall roster. And I think that this will be turned into a shootout, but it's a good point with Miller potentially being a little nervous or rusty early. And then you can jump in on Florida live. But I do think that the number is too high now with the Gators. Both teams, I think, will be motivated. Napier, first year as coach. Oregon State completely flopped in their bowl last year. So, and I think Jonathan Smith will have them ready. Fast track. I think both offenses have advantages here. So, yeah, I agree on the over.